Have you ever considered that the symbol we're taught to associate with freedom and democracy might actually be a monument to the greatest historical falsification ever pulled off? From childhood, we're told the same story on repeat. The Statue of Liberty was a generous gift from France built in the late 1800s to celebrate American independence. Textbooks, tour guides, plaques all recite the same script. But what if that script collapses the moment you look at the statue through the eyes of an engineer instead of a historian? Because what stands in New York Harbor is not just a statue. It is a 93-meter tall copper and metal colossus weighing over 250 tons. And the more closely you examine how it was supposedly built, the more impossible the official story becomes. We're told the internal framework was designed by Gustav Eiffel, a convenient name and a brand of credibility, but names don't solve engineering problems. Processes do, materials do, and logistics do. And when you examine the metallurgy of the 1880s, cracks immediately appear. Steel production at the time was unstable, inconsistent, and expensive. The Bessemer process and open hearth furnaces were still experimental elite technologies. Steel was used for tools and weapons, not for mass-producing precision load-bearing frameworks capable of surviving hurricane winds and saltwater environments. Yet we're asked to believe that France casually produced thousands of tons of perfectly uniform iron and steel while simultaneously suffering economic devastation after the Franco-Prussian War. Where were the factories? Where are the production records? Where did the metal come from? France claims credit for engineering the Statue of Liberty as a triumph of the 19th century ingenuity. Yet France's residential architecture of the same era reveals a clear inconsistency. Much of it was utilitarian and peasant level, lacking the monumental scale, the metallurgical precision, and the structural sophistication embodied by Lady Liberty. Where is the architectural lineage? The expertise required to build a colossal copper monument with an advanced internal framework does not echo through the homes, civic buildings, or infrastructure French craftsmen were producing at that time. How does a society struggling with basic living standards suddenly demonstrate world-class engineering mastery in a single, unprecedented monument? Archival data doesn't line up with the scale of construction, and the photographs were shown conveniently to avoid the most critical moments. We never see real-time assembly of the load-bearing joints. We never see multi-ton beams being lifted into the air using nothing but wooden scaffolding, hemp ropes, and hand winches. Think about that physics for a moment. Tons of metal, high winds, open harbor, no modern cranes, yet no mass casualties, no disasters, and no engineering failures recorded. It's as if the statue was never built, only assembled around something that already existed. And when you examine the internal structure, suspicion deepens. The Statue of Liberty uses a curtain wall system, a skin that carries no load hanging from an internal skeleton. That principle didn't become standard until skyscraper construction decades later. So how did 19th century engineers leap ahead of their own era unless they didn't invent it at all, unless they found it? What if Eiffel and Bartholdi didn't create the statue, but refaced it? What if they discovered a surviving structure from a previous civilization and rebranded it as a modern achievement? That would explain everything. Look at the pedestal. Beneath the statue sits a granite base and Fort Wood, an 11-pointed star fortress. We're told that this is a defense feature built to protect it from wooden ships. That explanation collapses instantly. Star forts existed all over the world, sharing geometry, orientation, and proportions, that make little sense militarily, but enormous sense energetically. These are not forts, they are platforms, cymatic frequencies frozen in time. And placing a massive copper conductor at the center of one, holding a torch toward the sky, begins to look less like symbolism and more like function. Now let's talk numbers, because numbers don't care about myths. The statue's foundation allegedly contains 27,000 tons of concrete, supposedly the largest concrete monolith of its time. And this was in the 1880s, no concrete trucks, no automated batching plants, no continuous concrete mixers. Concrete literally had to be mixed by hand or crude steam engines. Pouring that volume without cold joints would require non-stop delivery for months on a small island by barge. Where are the supply records? Where are the invoices? Where are the fleets of barges? They don't exist. The far more logical explanation is that the foundation already existed and was reused. And then there's the copper skin, 31 tons of copper, hammered into 2.4 millimeter sheets using repousse techniques. Any small error in geometry at the bottom would compound into catastrophic misalignment at the top. This level of precision would challenge even modern fabrication, yet we're told it was done by hand, by eye. And not to mention that copper and iron in a salty marine environment should destroy each other through galvanic corrosion within decades. The solution, we're told, was asbestos and shellac insulation, manually applied at thousands of contact points, so perfectly that the statue survived nearly a century without major structural repair. That isn't engineering, that's fantasy. So then you gotta ask yourself, who the hell built this? New York in the 1800s was populated largely by unskilled migrant labor. Where are the elite metal workers, the master engineers, the foremen? Their names are missing. No diaries, no memoirs, no hospital records from mass rivet injuries, no strikes, no lawsuits. We're told the statue was disassembled into 214 crates and shipped across the Atlantic. But ship blueprints from the era show cargo holds that physically could not accommodate those curved components without severe deformation. Are we seriously expected to believe that thin, hammered copper sheets were packed into wooden crates and survived Atlantic crossings through storm-heavy seas without major damage? That's absurd. The simplest explanation is that nothing was shipped because nothing was built. And then there's the torch. In 1886, we're told the Statue of Liberty became the world's first electrified lighthouse, powered by underwater cables that connected to Edison's Pearl Street Power Station, which had just recently opened in 1882. The age of electricity was just beginning. Thomas Edison had just launched his first power station on Pearl Street, which barely served a few blocks of lower Manhattan, constantly breaking down and constantly overheating. It's also important to know that the original torch was replaced. It's now conveniently locked in a museum, and I don't think that it was an arc lamp that was being powered via an underwater cable, because the technologies for insulating underwater high voltage cables at that time were in their infancy. And such a cable laid with 19th century technology would have turned into a short circuit within a week. Yet the torch burned, and not like ordinary light. Contemporary reports describe a cold, piercing glow that behaves unnaturally in fog. Birds reportedly fall dead near it. This wasn't incandescent light. My theory is that the original torch was not only a source of light, but that the entire island is a star fort that is part of an old world energy grid, a wireless interconnected network of sites spanning around the world, all drawing energy from the ether through a coordinated system of towers. The original torch could have been some type of atmospheric condenser because the statue uses copper. It has an insulated base and an internal core. That's a resonant system. And during this time, young Nikola Tesla would have been around 30 years old, and there isn't much written about whether or not Tesla was involved with the Statue of Liberty project during this time, which is strange considering the fact that this was his area of expertise and the fact that Nikola Tesla was already in America when the Statue of Liberty was first illuminated. What's even strange is that Tesla's most famous invention, the Tesla coil, may have been old world free energy technology that was reverse engineered during his time. The Liberty torch resembles a Tesla coil, and it is made of copper. The Statue of Liberty also resembles the ancient goddess of electricity who has been demonized in modern time to hide free energy. The statue may have also served as an antenna, a receiver, and a distributor of free energy that connected this area to the worldwide energy grid that once existed. And what is clear is that we didn't build it, and many signs point to the idea that it may be some sort of old world energy device that the 19th century didn't understand and couldn't control. It was very common in the old world to make one single deity by blending a god with a goddess, and the Statue of Liberty resembles the god Apollo or Helios mixed with the goddess Electra. We're told that the crown, the 7 rays on the head, symbolize continents and seas, but in ancient symbolism, rays symbolize the ether. One of the most common symbolic expressions of ether was rays or emanations, and these rays of light represented the visible effect of an invisible medium, because ether was considered invisible yet active. Straight or radial lines symbolized emanation, transmission, or flow through space. Rays were often understood not just as light, but as ether in motion or energy carried by the ether. Gustav Eiffel didn't build the Statue of Liberty, and he didn't build the Eiffel Tower. An old world civilization was wiped out, and after the reset, these men merely claimed these amazing technological devices. They rewrote history and hid the free energy past by disguising these devices as just symbolic monuments. I also believe that Nikola Tesla is just a front man used to be the face of technology that we discovered from the old world after the reset, and claimed as new discoveries to hide the true old world intent behind why they were built and the true potential they had. Also to hide what all of this represents for humanity, society, and sovereignty. Now back to Mr. Gustav Eiffel. There's a connection between the Eiffel Tower in Paris and the Statue of Liberty in America. Inside the Statue of Liberty is a small Eiffel Tower, and these towers are ideal for wave transmission, not for foot traffic. It is very cramped, uncomfortable, and hostile to humans because it wasn't designed for humans. The statue vibrates in wind, the acoustics are disorienting, and ventilation was added later. This is clearly a machine. Now let's zoom out. Let's look at 19th century photos of New York. Vast stone cities, monumental infrastructure, streets empty. And they say that people are missing in the photos due to long exposure. That excuse fails. Even long exposures capture ghost traces of movement. These images show nothing. No crowds, no carts, no life. Yet infrastructure built for millions already exists? Why would a young nation build sewage systems and water tunnels sized for populations that didn't exist yet? Because they didn't build them, they inherited them. Demographic data shows missing generations, gaps too large to explain by war alone. This is a post-cataclysm population pattern. Orphans everywhere, adult laborers missing. This is a reset. And into these ruins walk new elites, tasked with rewriting history, claiming authorship of a world they didn't create. Even the Freemasons marked it, literally, laying the cornerstone, sealing ownership. And then there's the smaller replicas in Paris. We're told that they were prototypes. More likely, they were attempts to reverse engineer something already found. They copied the form, but not the function, because the original isn't art. It's a machine from a lost world. Now, why would they hide it? Because it represents a world of free energy, a world without scarcity, and a world of autonomy, liberty, and equality. They hid it because they wanted a world of scarcity and control. The Statue of Liberty isn't just a symbolic monument, it is a mechanical device from an advanced old world society and a testament to a time of free energy. It is an archetype that we can find consistent around the world, and that is a goddess of electricity that everyone on every land once understood as a symbolic archetype for free energy. And this archetype was the focal point of an ancient energy grid and the representation of the ether. Long before we had the god Thor, we had goddesses that represented electricity. And these goddesses weren't just chunks of steel, they were free energy devices that connected man to the heavens. And right now, I'll share some compelling evidence that should give you the same conclusion. The Statue of Liberty resembles the same architecture we see throughout all of Tartaria, and one thing consistent throughout the old world is the goddess of electricity who was deleted from history. But yet we can find her on old stamps and other items. There are similar goddesses around the world from various different cultures, which seem to have all been interconnected worldwide under one understanding of reality. And with this understanding, they shared a worldwide interconnected free energy grid. One common feature I see with all of these goddesses is that they all stand on top of some sort of cube or box or some sort of platform. And that cube or box would have had equipment or machinery inside of it that would have helped power the mechanism. These statues are more like huge Tesla coils, creating a wireless interconnected grid of free energy worldwide. If we wanted to look at these so-called statues as Tesla coils, then the box that the statues sit on would be equivalent to the resonator base that the Tesla coil sits upon. And from that base, we would only need a tower that can reach up into the electrically charged atmosphere and siphon the energy. The tip of that tower will conclude with the ring that we see at the top of the Tesla coil tower. And as we see, the highest point on all of these statues is that ring, which is the capstone of the tower. What's even more revealing is that the highest point of the Statue of Liberty, which is the torch, resembles a Tesla coil, and it is made of copper, just like a Tesla coil. And these are just a couple of images that I'm flashing on the screen to show you different forms of this deity before the patriarchs came and turned her into a man called Thor and Zeus and others. And they did this to hide the original meaning of it all and bring us into the patriarchal age of capitalism and literally believing in patriarchal deities who rule over us with tyrannical authority versus the ancient goddesses who were just archetypes who embodied the knowledge of the ether and liberated man with knowledge. This video shows how these Tesla coil towers could power the world wirelessly. If you scale this technology up and you perfect it to the level of the ancients, then you can create a huge grid of interconnected towers, all creating their own huge fields that interlock seamlessly, creating a free energy grid worldwide. This would also explain why we find ancient complex mechanisms with intricate parts that were meant to be in motion. And these mechanisms have no hand cranks or anything to set the parts in motion. It is my theory that at some point, all technological devices were engineered to power itself wirelessly by tapping into this grid. We're also told that these statues represent enlightenment. Could they be telling us the truth right in our face? These towers were also lighthouses. They were made to be beacons of light. And the light that shined from these towers was powered by the tower itself. It didn't need underground cables, and that wouldn't have worked anyway. So the fact that these towers represent enlightenment, it makes me wonder, are they talking about lighting up the city or lighting up our minds with knowledge? Because it can't be the latter. I believe that these towers represented energy and literal light. More proof of this can be found in my home state of Alabama. There's a statue of the goddess Electra in Birmingham on top of the Alabama Power Building. And if you look at the goddess Electra, she is just another form of the Statue of Liberty. This is more proof that the Statue of Liberty is just another old world archetype of this free energy goddess. And that explains why they want to demonize it and associate it with fear, spookism, and mysticism. Theories like the unshackled chain around the ankle represents the beast being released. Which one makes more sense? Some scary mythological boogeyman beast being released, or the fact that the statue represents liberation? And one of the most common ways of symbolizing liberation is unshackled chains. And to prove my point, here is the Yoruban goddess of electricity. Her name is Oya, and in a lot of her depictions, she's seen wearing a veil because she represents the same thing that Lady Liberty represents, blind justice. Because in the old world, this was not just an archetype to represent free energy, but it also represented freedom, liberty, and equality within society as well. So think about everything we just went over. This statue was not only made to be a wireless energy transmitter and receiver, but also a beacon of light. Light is symbolic of energy, and in this case, free energy. And electricity was still kind of mysterious to a lot of people. It was being demonized, and the idea of wireless electric transmissions was almost like magic. So the concept of the light bearer, these statues that are creating light with no cords, no wires, it always had a stigma around it. And that was intentional to demonize these goddesses and the free energy past that they represent. And that's why today, the concept of the light bearers, we're taught to look at it as spooky, mystic, or demonize it or make it satanic. The ether is symbolized by 7 rays, or there are other abstract variations of the symbol, which simply shows a single point with lines or rays expanding from it in some sort of way. This simple concept evolved into a humanized archetype, and we can see this with the goddess Medusa. We can see this with the Lady Liberty spikes and other goddesses, but all of this was just to show the same concept that we see with the plasma ball, which is that electrical discharges can be clean, quiet, and subtle. They can be non-combustion discharges. Electricity is a plasma, but the way that we decide to harness it dictates whether it is released clean or dirty. And in the case of a plasma ball, it represents clean plasma discharges, and this can be translated into clean, usable free energy. So right now we're just comparing a Tesla coil to a plasma ball to show you what I mean. The sparks that's coming from this Tesla coil are not like regular electric discharges or lightning strikes, because those type of discharges leave behind smoke. They are combustion type of discharges, and they are very dirty and violent. Whereas the plasma discharges that we see coming from Tesla's coil and from the plasma ball are just the opposite. This leads to my next point and to my final proof that these towers were more than just symbolic statues. They were Tesla coils scaled up to huge proportions. So there have been several instances where the Statue of Liberty was struck by lightning. And in each case, it made the news. And it was a huge story, but no one stopped and asked themselves, why wasn't it ever damaged? And why was there never any repairs made to it? And not only that, when it so-called got struck by lightning, there was no smoke, no combustion, and it didn't even make a sound upon impact. I want to show you a video of what happens when real lightning strikes an object so that we can compare it to the videos of the Statue of Liberty getting struck by lightning. Now, here is a real lightning strike. And here is the so-called lightning strike videos of the Statue of Liberty.
Oh my God. That was right on it.
You see the difference? Everything that I just showed you in those videos prove that the so-called lightning strikes that are striking the Statue of Liberty and the Eiffel Tower are not real lightning strikes. Yes, people, I said the Eiffel Tower as well. Because just like the Statue of Liberty, the Eiffel Tower gets struck by lightning all the time. And in each case, just like the Statue of Liberty, there's no combustion, no smoke, no repairs, no sparks like we seen in the video of the real lightning strike. So what's going on here? The truth is that these aren't lightning strikes. They are subtle plasma discharges, just like we see from a plasma ball. And if you look at a plasma ball, you can see the little tower that leads up to a circular ring, just like a Tesla coil. And the sparks are coming from that circular ring, just like a Tesla coil. This plasma ball is nothing but a little Tesla coil inside of a ball, basically. And those are not lightning strikes. They are subtle plasma discharges and an example of clean, subtle energy. And this Tesla coil is emitting an energy field all around it. The sparks are like the ley lines running through the field, but energy can be pulled wirelessly from the field itself, just like we seen in the video. So it's totally possible that these towers around the world are the old world remains of an advanced technological energy grid. I personally believe that these old world towers are still functionable and that every now and then the controllers test them out right in front of our faces and hide them with news stories about these towers being struck by lightning. But this is not lightning. This is technology from an old world who knew the secrets of free energy and harnessing the power of the ether. These are plasma discharges, the same type of discharges that we see coming from Tesla's tower, which was called Wardenclyffe. The same discharges that we see coming from these huge Tesla coils. They are not dangerous and they are not lightning. they are never violent or destructive in nature like lightning, which explains why there are never any repairs done after these so-called strikes. And last but not least, one thing I find interesting about Tesla's connection with the old world knowledge and the goddess of electricity is that Nikola Tesla initiated the idea of wirelessly transmitting electrical power in the late 19th century. And here is a quote from Tesla that you can pause and read. Here is an image of the goddess Electra. And one thing that I find interesting that no one points out about this image is that she's holding an illuminated light bulb, and it doesn't have any kind of cord running from it to power it. In my opinion, the goddess Electra is showing us that wireless electric energy systems was common knowledge at some point. And to take it a step further, this image shows Nikola Tesla powering a light bulb by sending an electric current through his own body. This was all done wirelessly. Tesla was embodying the knowledge of the goddess. Here's another image of Tesla passing an electric current through his body, wirelessly proving that electricity can be wirelessly transmitted safely and subtly. As the current passes through his body, his hand is transmitting that current into the light bulb, which is actually powering the light bulb with touch. This proves that you can build one huge interconnected wireless grid with just us interacting with the technology we would power it. And in this image, when he does the same experiment, this particular light bulb is illuminating very bright. It almost looked like he's holding a plasma bolt. This was demonstrating clean, safe, wireless electric transmissions. These images are a threat to the system of control, but they couldn't just delete them from history, so they placed a stigma on this technology. They attach a fear to it, which is why the concept of the light bearer is seen as satanic. There is no boogeyman for us to be scared of. In the old world, there was no God going to war with the devil. That was God in unison with a goddess, which is what the yin yang represents. So today they hit everything with God versus the devil, and they corrupted the original system of God having a goddess that he's paired with to show us the unison, the balance of the frequencies which you need to generate energy, negative and positive. So they basically turned the diva, the feminine aspect, the diva, into the devil. And they put the two at war versus teaching us the unison, the balancing of these polarizing forces, which is the secrets of generating life, energy. So they hid all of this deep knowledge about the Statue of Liberty behind fears of the light bearer. When you really think about who the original light bearer was, it was these goddesses that embodied the knowledge of the ether. And when we compare these iconic images of Nikola Tesla to images of the goddess of electricity, then we can see that Tesla was embodying the knowledge of the old world. This will explain why Tesla's famous electric oscillator resembles the Egyptian Ankh. And the Ankh is a feminine symbol. The Egyptians were part of the old world Tartarian energy grid, and Egypt was connected to that worldwide system. Jesus is just a modern deity that is hiding this knowledge behind the religious script associated with him. But the original form of Jesus was Zeus, whom many scholars see as an equivalent to Apollo. And this will explain why Apollo and Jesus both have a crown of thorns or spiky headdress, because they are just modern patriarchal forms of Lady Liberty and this free energy and plasma ball concept. And to prove my point, remember we said earlier that one of the abstract symbols for the ether is just a point with lines coming from it. And later that this simple concept was humanized into an archetype. You can see another version of this with the old church's concept of the man of sin, which is an old version of Jesus Christ, And this is why we read that Jesus Christ was pierced in all of his sides, because he's a modern form of the man of sin. None of this is meant to be spooky or scary. It is just a personification of a plasma ball, just like Medusa. Again, it is just a personification of the ether, which is a single point with rays emanating from it, like the all-seeing eye. The Redeemer statue in Brazil has copper within its internal structure that reinforces it. It also has copper within the electrical wiring and maintenance hardware. It also gets struck by lightning all the time, and it's never damaged, it's never repaired after the strikes. Now, we are told that a large portion of the copper that is inside of the Christ Redeemer statue in Brazil is specifically located in the lightning rod system, which was installed to protect it. But the problem with that is it is a big contradiction, because on the other hand, we are taught in science that wearing copper during a lightning storm isn't recommended, and it is very dangerous. The CDC, NOAA, and the National Weather Service all claim that scientific research supports the idea that wearing copper during a lightning storm is dangerous. Before modern world religion, God didn't have a form. God was just energy. God, or energy, only took a personalized form as various archetypes that embodied the knowledge of free energy or free energy harnessing. And the first archetypes were feminine goddesses in advanced old world matriarchal societies. And what Jesus is personifying is the Ankh, the symbol of life. The secrets of our universe and the greatest truth that all of the knowledge of our reality is founded upon is the knowledge of the ether and energy, which is why Jesus, with his arms open, is representing a Tesla coil, which is an Ankh, because God simply means power, energy. And this isn't exclusive to Jesus. Before Jesus, there were other deities that owned this pose, and these photos will show you some of those deities. Remember that box we spoke of earlier? Well, that same box was called Mount Calvary, and Jesus was mounted up upon it.